Here's a more engaging, simplified version. Gervonta "Tank" Davis is known for being one of boxing's hardest hitters, with a perfect record of 30 wins and 28 knockouts. But it's not just in the ring where he's dangerous. His training sessions show just how intense he can be. In his latest gym footage, he's making it hard to tell who's even in the ring with him. While his fights with Ryan Garcia and Isaac Cruz were tougher, Tank is still bringing that same fire, proving he's always ready for whatever comes next. It looks like Tank is pushing himself harder than ever, and that could be because he recently announced this might be his last year in boxing. He's likely aiming to give it his all and leave the sport on top when the crowd is roaring the loudest. The latest video shows him working on his body with stretches and push-ups. Throughout his career, the lightweight champ has had issues with making weight, and he's clearly working extra hard to avoid what happened before his last fight, when he had to miss his bigger rival. Tank was out on the road jogging, working hard to make weight. After his body exercises, he hit the mitts and the punching bag, testing his power. He then sparred with an unknown partner before taking a short break. When he got back to the camera, he said, taking it all out on March 1st. According to Boxing News 24, Davis is already focused on getting in top shape and is nearly at his weight for his upcoming title defense. He's also gearing up for the journey toward retirement, something his promoter, Leonard Ellerby, mentioned in a recent chat. In a recent chat, Leonard Ellerby reflected on Tank's announcement about retiring, saying, "Life is so much more than just what you do for a living. You have to respect the fans who pay to see you fight, but there's also a life outside of boxing." Ellerby acknowledged that things change when you have kids, and Tank sees life differently now than he did 6 or 7 years ago. Tank's focus has shifted, and while his retirement announcement was clear, Ellerby emphasized that fans may want him to keep fighting, but ultimately, Tank has to do what's best for his life. Leonard Ellerby also pointed out the harsh realities of boxing, calling it a brutal sport where many fighters from the past were taken advantage of and faced serious health issues. They went through a lot, and some permanent problems, he said, acknowledging the toll boxing can take on a person. While some boxers aim to leave their mark and step away from the sport, Ellerby understands that everyone has different goals in life. Surprisingly, Tank Davis hasn't taken much of a break after his last win. He jumped right back into training with the Olympic team and, shortly after, returned to his gym for individual sessions with his coaches. Sessions music. Tank Davis is more determined than ever to take his career to the next level, aiming for a showdown with another world champion. To prepare for that, he's been pushing himself harder in training. In his latest session, he was sparring with an opponent clearly bigger than him, showing his commitment to challenging himself. While Tank would easily knock out sparring partners around his own weight, he's stepping up his game by going against tougher, larger opponents to sharpen his skills even more. In a recent training session, Tank Davis faced a tougher challenge due to his sparring partner's size. Lamont Roach saw the footage and tweeted on X, "Easy work," before eventually deleting it. The tweet was random but would have been understood by those who followed Roach's previous posts or had seen Tank's training footage. Not long before that, Roach also responded to a fan who wrote, "We are whipping DC bum for the rest of the year. Ravens today, Tank in December." It was clear that Roach was keeping an eye on Tank's progress, even if his comments sparked some confusion. Responded, "This stuff is different over here," claiming he won't be a victim of Tank Davis when they eventually lock horns in the ring. All of these culminated in his tweet about Tank Davis's training session, and really Lamont Roach has some good work to do in hyping himself up ahead of the fight. He's in such a situation where he needs to focus on the gym and focus on getting a huge payday, hence this requires him to keep trying to make an impression before the fight and get Gervonta Davis involved in a serious feud with him. If you ask me, I'd suggest Lamont Roach should focus on his training, work on everything that needs improvement, and perfect his skills as he gears up for the biggest fight of his career. But maybe he has a different view, especially since he started a social media war with Tank Davis. Despite being the WBA super featherweight champion, fans aren't really buzzing about the fight yet. Still, both boxers decided to hype it up when they went back and forth on X. Roach tried to troll the WBA lightweight champion, only to get a strong and fiery response from Davis, adding more fuel to their rivalry. You brought up a smaller guy, W. No, I mean like the argument started when heavyweight boxer Marcellus Williams asked Davis about the camp fees to spar with the champion. Williams wanted to work on his skills and had every motivation to make the situation work. However, Lamont Roach Jr. quickly responded to the tweet and stated, "He could need to spar you, broad, no funny." Davis immediately asked the meaning behind the post, and Roach quoted a fan reaction who explained the tweet. Roach quoted a fan reply who wrote, "Translation, you need to spar someone heavy, cause he coming with it," explaining the meaning behind Roach's tweet. According to the Reaper, the 30 boxer needs to spar against heavier boxers before their fight in December, and even though Davis is thinking of an easy fight, Roach will take this opportunity to make a name for himself and increase his stocks. To me personally, I'm not stunned Tank didn't let the disrespect slide and fired back, telling Roach, "I'd advise you not to talk so much. It can be bad for you. You know that already, though." He made it clear that Roach should save the talking for the ring, not online, and warned him about the consequences of angering the WBA lightweight champion. From there, the back and forth escalated quickly as Roach hit back, saying he's not like the other opponents Tank has faced over the years. Roach, who's often been accused of handpicking his fights, responded, "You must think I'm one of those regular guys you fought or some LOL, cut it out." He made sure the Baltimore native knew this fight would be different, despite coming from a lower weight class. Roach is determined to make his mark, promising to do whatever it takes to make this fight happen and prove he's a real challenge. Shock the world. Gervonta Davis once again decided to control his words and indicated that he would do the talking in the ring. This between us both in two close amateur fights. Tank Davis and Lamont Roach Jr. exchanged some intense moments, and now, this online war is just adding fuel to the fire. Tank, expressing his confidence, quoted the Reaper's tweet and simply wrote, "Say nothing," signaling his belief in his superiority over the WBA super featherweight champion. This back and forth has definitely sparked more hype for the upcoming fight, scheduled for 135 pounds in the WBA lightweight division. This showdown is quickly becoming one of the most anticipated clashes in the boxing world. Before his last fight, we got a preview of what was to come, but many thought it was just a casual stunt. However, both his coach, Calvin Ford, and former promoter, Leonard Ellerby, confirmed that the Tank Davis who returned after a 14-month layoff was a whole different animal, one the boxing world hadn't seen since the early days of his career. Leading up to the fight, Tank was noticeably absent during the media workout, but his coach, Calvin Ford, was there to represent him, keeping things professional and focused on business. Davis came into this matchup with incredible momentum, and his coach, Calvin Ford, didn't want fans to read too much into his absence. Speaking to Fight Hype, Ford reassured everyone, saying, "I want to apologize to the fans." He downplayed the buzz that had been building for the media event, explaining he can't make it at this moment because he's been delayed, but he's going to make it up to y'all on fight night. "Trust me, y'all want to see the performance he's going to put on," Ford continued, reminding the fans, "How long y'all been knowing Tank? I used to do the same thing y'all do. I stopped doing it. Let him do what he does because, at the end of the day, that's what makes Tank." He further emphasized, "I don't know how his body is, sometimes y'all got to trust the process." Calvin Ford was confident and kept the mood optimistic, telling the fans, "Do y'all feel that energy? We're getting ready to roll out to the world." When asked if Tank would make it to the press conference, Ford was quick to respond, "Let's look at history. Let's look at stats. How many times have y'all seen him miss a press conference? He did show up one time, but I've never seen Tank miss one." Ford reassured the crowd and fired a warning to Tank's opponent, saying, "We're back in business," on behalf of the absent fighter, making it clear that the buzz was far from over. "We've been waiting for this for a while," Ford said, reflecting on Davis's first fight back after a 14-month break. "We want to put on a great performance for the fans at the end of the day." Addressing the critics, he reassured them, "For those feeding into the conspiracy theories, there's no need for concern. We're good, trust me." Ford expressed his confidence in Davis's readiness, adding, "Y'all want your guy to come out and put on a show for y'all, trust me. Watching him in camp, it actually scares me because of what he's doing and the maturity he's showing when he gets in that ring. He'll hurt Frank Martin," Ford said, emphasizing how focused Davis has been throughout his training. "I've seen him paying attention, staying in tune with everything, and he's really locked in." Despite the grand arrival event, Davis was out running in Vegas, staying fully committed to his preparation. Leonard Ellerby, Davis's promoter, was even more confident, saying, "When you look at the younger generation, there's one name that rings everywhere, Tank Davis." He added, "Canelo ain't scared of him. It's just business at the end of the day." Ellerby highlighted Davis's dominance, stating, "People are starting to realize he's the most exciting and dominant fighter in the world. When he steps into the ring, he's not playing around. He's focused on ending the fight. He doesn't leave it to the judges. He gives fans exactly what they want, a thrilling performance. You know he's going to score a knockout, and this fight will be no different come Saturday night." His strong words about Tank Davis's upcoming fight definitely sparked some controversy.
Let's be real. Okay, for starters, in 2017, do you know what Tank was doing? Tank became world champion. You know what?
Champion in 2017, and since then, he's only gotten better. Leonard Ellerby continued to emphasize the difference in experience and skill between Tank Davis and Frank Martin, pointing out that Martin's opponent history doesn't compare to Tank's, especially given the level of competition Davis has faced over the years. Ellerby's comments were designed to set the tone for the upcoming fight, stressing that despite Martin's great training with Derek James, the challenge ahead of him is much bigger than what he's faced so far in his career. It's clear from Ellerby's perspective that Tank's experience and rise to dominance make him a force to be reckoned with. Tank Davis was doing in 2017. He was already claiming titles and dominating the lightweight division. Leonard Ellerby wasn't having any of the talk from Frank Martin's camp, especially with Errol Spence Jr. claiming that Tank would be dominated for 12 rounds. Ellerby quickly dismissed that statement, emphasizing Tank's growth and experience over the years. "Errol don't believe that dumb stuff," he said, underscoring his confidence in Tank's ability to handle anyone put in front of him. While Martin has had great training under Derek James, Ellerby made it clear that Tank's experience and ability in the ring set him apart. Tank became world champion in 2017, and he's only gotten better since, he continued, stressing the gap in their careers and achievements. It was a bold statement, setting the stage for what promises to be a thrilling fight. "Great, and Tank Davis is great." Ellerby didn't hold back, asserting that Martin's experience doesn't measure up to Tank's in-ring knowledge and growth. He pointed out that Martin wasn't even a professional back in 2017 when Tank was already making his mark as a world champion. Ellerby emphasized the importance of experience in boxing, saying, "You can't skip steps, and that true greatness comes from fighting top-tier competition over time." While he acknowledged Martin as a good fighter, he made it clear that there's a world of difference between being good and being great, and Tank Davis is in a league of his own. It was a confident, no-nonsense declaration, adding more fuel to the fire as the fight draws near. Understand the argument, but the truth is Tank Davis brings the excitement that fans want to see. Leonard Ellerby didn't hold back in his assessment of Roach, acknowledging that Lamont is a solid fighter with championship-level skills, but he made it clear that Tank's level of performance, energy, and star power is what truly elevates the sport. "Everything that he does good, Tank does better," Ellerby said. He pointed out that while Roach has technical skills, fans tuning in for a Tank Davis fight expect something explosive, something that leaves them on the edge of their seats. He wrapped up by saying, "Come Saturday night, don't blink, because this could be over early." For Ellerby, this fight isn't just about facing another skilled opponent. It's about the spectacle, the showmanship, and the undeniable power that Tank brings to the ring. As a pay-per-view star, Davis has built a brand based on thrilling performances, and for Ellerby, that's what makes him a legitimate draw, not just another fighter on the circuit. You raise a valid point. While Tank Davis has long been established as a pay-per-view star, the argument hinges on whether Lamont Roach is the type of opponent who can justify those ticket prices. As you mentioned, Roach is a solid fighter, but his trajectory hasn't reached the pinnacle of superstardom, and he's certainly not the kind of polarizing personality that makes fans rush to pay-per-view events. Roach's success at super featherweight has been steady, but it's not the kind of sustained dominance or explosive performances that would make his bout with Davis a marquee matchup. His title defense against Jono Carroll wasn't exactly a world-shattering spectacle, and while Roach is no slouch in the ring, he hasn't consistently proved that he can compete at the top level of the division in a way that would make this bout as compelling as other potential matchups for Davis. If Roach had made a string of impressive title defenses or captured major attention with exciting performances, the fight would have a much greater sense of urgency and anticipation. But given his relative lack of high-profile wins, Davis's fight with him might be seen more as a stepping stone rather than a headline event for the pay-per-view audience. This is where the gap between a solid fighter and a true pay-per-view draw becomes apparent. Fans aren't just looking for skill. They're looking for drama, personality, and stakes that will make the event unforgettable. Roach might be a skilled fighter, but his presence hasn't yet carried that same magnetism or explosive appeal that elevates fights like Tank's into massive pay-per-view draws. You're absolutely right in pointing out the way pay-per-view fights often work. Once a fighter like Tank Davis reaches that elite level of popularity and status, their name alone can drive pay-per-view sales, regardless of the opponent. This is exactly what we saw with Davis against Hector Luis Garcia, where Garcia had been an underrated opponent, yet Tank's star power made it a headline event. The problem with that model, though, is that it can create a situation where the substance of the matchup starts to feel secondary. The allure of the fighter, in this case Davis, starts to outweigh the opponent's pedigree or the stakes of the fight itself. We see this frequently in boxing, where a fighter becomes a brand more than just a contender. Davis has established himself as such a major draw that even a less-than-stellar opponent like Garcia can become the focus of a pay-per-view event, simply because fans are there to see Tank perform. That being said, if Roach is the next opponent and is still on that pay-per-view platform, it's a reminder of how the system works in boxing. It's less about matching the two most dangerous fighters for a title, and more about creating a spectacle that puts the bigger name on display. I'd love to know your thoughts on whether this pay-per-view model works in the long term. Do you think it's sustainable for Tank, or will fans start to lose interest if the matchups don't deliver the kind of excitement they've come to expect from a fighter of his stature? Yeah, you're right to point out that Frank Martin's status at lightweight gives him more credibility as a legitimate opponent. Martin's experience at that weight class and his buzz around a potential fight with Shakur Stevenson meant that fans had a genuine interest in seeing what he could do against the elite in boxing. He's built a reputation with solid performances that kept him on track for bigger matchups. Meanwhile, Lamont Roach Jr., despite being highly spoken of, just hasn't established that same kind of anticipation at lightweight. His one title defense against Jason Vasquez is notable, but Roach hasn't shown the kind of explosive, dynamic performances that would generate excitement on a grand scale, especially on the pay-per-view stage. His win over Fergal was a step in the right direction, but it's not enough to elevate him to that next level of buzz that someone like Martin or even Tank's former opponents, like Leo Santa Cruz, would bring to the table.
Nice competitive fight.
Yeah. He's not going to fight like Martin, he got a more come forward style.